fantasy nerds. Oh shoot. Sorry. Yes, I'm wearing a pink fluffy robe because I don't feel well. And my sinuses are acting up. I took some medication, so I'm probably gonna be just a little bit drowsy. But I'm pushing through for you guys. I finished reading the Book of Life, and I have so many things to say. I have like, I don't know, 4 pages of things to say. Um, oh, just sorry. I can barely breathe right now. It's it's hard out here for a pimp. But yeah, like if you can see, if you're a fan of Kendrick, I'll take care of yourself. Thank you, deliberately random. I am. I took some medication. Um, as you can see, I got my big fluffy pink because I love pink. If y'all don't know me, I love pink. My pink fluffy robe on. And can you also see I got the Kendrick at the Super Bowl Say Drake shirt on. If you like that, I could put a link to it in the description. Um, but oh. So, first off, okay, let's get started because it's gonna be a minute. First off, unlike the show, which showed Emily dying right as Diana and Matthew get back from 1591, Emily died off page weeks ago. She has already been buried at the Temple of the Goddess long before they come home. And the show actually, the book actually opens up with Emily's and Philippe's ghosts talking to each other on one of the towers of Septors. And Philippe explaining they don't see you until they moved on. Who is the otherworldly thing that decides this? We have no idea. But when the people have moved on, they can see the ghosts. So, okay. And then she also saw Diana saw Krishna Katharaya. Hi. Did I say that right? Krishna Katharaya. Hi. Um, yeah, so y'all excuse me. She sees Philippe at the end of the book. I guess this shows that she has moved on. So he reveals himself to her and just her. Hello, Meritus. I can't say her name. Merit Simsek. I'm saying that all types of wrong, but hello. Um, and she actually sees her father in the climax. Her father sort of shows him, she sees her father in the climax. Which I did not put in my notes, so I got to remember to come back to that. Okay. One of the main differences between, what book are we talking about? We are talking about the Book of Life, of which A Discovery of Witches season 3 is based off of, because A Discovery of Witches is based off of this All Souls trilogy of books. The first one being A Discovery of Witches, the second one being Shadow of Night, and the third one being Book of Life. No problem. So as I've been reading the books, I've been comparing them to the season that adapted them. So, one of the main differences between the book and show is there is a blurred line when it comes to the segregations of the creatures. Like in the show, they are more strict about the segregation. Like every creature is segregated. They don't talk to nobody. They don't deal with nobody. And The demons ain't even supposed to talk to each other. They so segregated. The only thing we have in the show is that Matthew's best friend is a demon, so they couldn't get rid of that. But in the books, you know, not so much in this books, but in the other books, you know, a yoga class for a yoga class for creatures, you know, witches, vampires, and demons is held at in the book there's almost no segregation. Exactly. Yeah, there's a yoga class for all the creatures at Matthew's house that a witch, you know, is the teacher of, and the witch lives in his house as his tenant. Then you have a demon as his best friend. And then you have Father Hubbard. He's not just talking about vampires, like, you know, his flock includes vampires, witches, and demons. And even though in the show they portray him as this person you're not supposed to trust and he's kind of smarmy, they do that at the beginning. They do that in book 2, but in book 3 you see him through his flock's eyes, and they love him. They love him. They trust him. They love what he's doing, and it feels like, oh, this is what the world is supposed to be like. No segregation. But I understand why the show took it away, because it's almost like, well, if everybody is already integrating, why is Matthew and Diana an issue? Why are they an issue? You also uh, yeah, so in the book, there are many instances of people blatantly disregarding the covenant. Matthew and Diana are not the first creatures to break it. Um, for one, okay, I went through that already. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Okay, Matthew and Diana weren't the first witch and vampire to have a baby. So apparently, Benjamin Fox, or Fuchs, it is so hard to say his name. Benjamin, Matthew's vampire son that he abandoned, had impregnated a witch years ago. Like, he's been a vampire for over 1,000 years, and the covenant came into place 1,000 years ago. So I think the way the book plays with time, he impregnates this witch. They find out that she has a baby from a vampire, and then they come up with the covenant, and then they create the congregation to enforce the covenant, because they were scared that if creatures start intermingling and start having these babies, then you're going to have witches and demons with long life. And the vampires, you know, the balance of power was always in vampires' favor because they're immortal, but demons and witches are not. And yeah, so they really, the covenant and the congregation was all created to keep the balance of power in vampire hands. Oh, excuse me. So in the book, they realized, I think they did so in the movie, but I felt like it was more emphasized in the book, that it had to be a weaver. The witch had to be a weaver in order, and the vampire had to have blood rage in order for them to be able to have the baby. You know, just it's not just any witch or weaver. And then we realized that, and I feel like the show did a better job of explaining this, but still at the same time they didn't really focus on the fact that it was because witches who are weavers have demon DNA, and vampires with blood rage have demon DNA. So because they both have demon DNA, they're able to procreate. But yeah, so they did explain the whole a witch with demon DNA can't procreate with a vampire with demon DNA. So that's why Marcus and Isabel were carriers but not affected. They did not have demon DNA. Do. So, and then, oh, I'm going to be jumping all around. I'm sorry. Thoughts are everywhere because I didn't write this down and I need to remember this. And a cute, oh, I'm sorry. In the show, in the book, there's, in the show, he is a little bit racist. Matthew? Is Matthew a little bit racist? Who's a little bit racist? I feel like, uh, I feel like I don't know. Matthew is an anomaly to me because in the very first book, they make it seem like, oh, he can't stand witches. He don't like them. He don't trust them. They that. But yet you let a witch live in your house. Yet you let a witch invite witches and vampires and demons to your house to do yoga. So there was some contradictions in Matthew's character. So I feel like the show got rid of those contradictions. Um, but yeah, in the book, I remember, I think when I did the first book versus novel, novel versus TV series, basically I said I had saw a video, I didn't watch it, but they were talking about a discovery of witches is basically Twilight with eugenics, and they come out and they talk about it's eugenics in this book, and I was like, yeah, it's eugenics. It's eugenics. They are, talking about keeping the purity of the race. But what's ended up happening is that they, because they keep only procreating with the people of their own race, they, what's happening is they became inbred, and that's where all these disease, the demons becoming crazy, the witches' powers are being lost, the the vampires aren't able to sire new vampires. Like it's all because of inbreeding. Where was I? Oh, I was talking about, okay, the weavers. So in the show, we see what's her name? Satu. Satu discover she's a weaver and she goes out and she learns her power and she controls her power. And in the end, she becomes the big boss. She becomes the big witch boss that Diana has to face before she faces off with Benjamin. In the book, it's not her, it's Peter Knox. She doesn't destroy Peter Knox at the airport. It's Peter Knox is with Benjamin Fuchs. And Satu, like when Diana sees her, like Diana has to go to, she goes to the congregation twice in this book. She goes to the congregation to get them to help her, free Matthew from Benjamin, blah, 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 blah. And then she goes back to break the covenant many, many months later. But I'll get to that later. So when she goes back to the congregation to get them to help free Matthew, she sees Satu, and she could tell Satu is a weaver, but Satu is not very good with her spell. And in the end, she just, tracks Satu down and then spellbinds her. After they meet with the congregation, I guess you could say because of what Satu did to her, almost killing her, then yeah, that's cause for her to be like, you're dangerous. But spellbinding is supposed to be like super, super, what do you call it? Taboo to witches. Spellbinding another witch is very, very, is frowned upon. So I like the change in the show that she still spellbound her, but she spellbound her after she did all these things to Matthew and helping Benjamin, with these witches and blah, 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 blah. The fact that she teamed up with a blood raged vampire and did all these horrible things, it made more sense to spellbind her then than just, oh, she's a weaver. She wasn't really good at being a weaver. She could tell by looking at her she wasn't a good weaver, and then just spellbinding her, because a year ago you tried to kill me. Um, it just didn't feel like I get it. You know, the attempted murder was a lot, but it was also a long time ago. Okay, so I like the change in that. I also like the fact that it wasn't her who took down Peter Knox, it was Sarah. Cause Sarah, you know, she's mad at Peter because, you know, Peter killed her parents. Peter killed Emily, her surrogate mother. But, you know, Sarah basically is a widow because of him. Like she's left, but she lost her sister, her brother-in-law, her wife. So there's a lot. I agree. The spellbinding didn't feel earned in the books. Yes, it didn't feel earned in the show. It felt earned. It didn't feel earned in the books. It's like, okay, it feels kind of, I don't know. It really didn't make Diana look good. I feel like Diana and Matthew look better on the show than they do in the books. They just don't look as good in the books. But yeah, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, yeah. So Sarah was the one who took down Peter Knox, and then at the end, Diana added her power to help her, and they brought him down together. I like that. I like that. I like how that happened on the show, as opposed to in the book. You know, he's just like, she meets up with him, he's talking mess, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and she don't say nothing. She just goes through, you know, knot of one, the spell begun, and she went through the whole thing, tying all the knots, and before, you know, and then finally on the last knot, then he was destroyed. I think she must have tied, did she do the 10th knot? I can't remember. It was a lot. I have to be honest with you, as it got to the end, I was skipping a lot. I skipped a lot because I felt like she was doing a lot of it just, I just wanted to get to the plot. I wanted to get to the plot, and I felt like, okay, so I am a writer, and I realize this is a failing in my writing. I don't do thorough enough descriptions, but I feel like they could be like, they could be a little too much. I gotta find a happy medium. Her descriptions, it's like, I'm ready to get you going to the climax of the show. She's going to the climax of the book. She's going to not the covenant, the congregation, to get them to help break out her husband. And then she describes, oh, the room in the she describes the room in the congregation for like paragraphs before we move on. And I'm like, I don't care what this room looks like. I need her to take her thing. And then it didn't, then it took days. It took literal days. Like, while she was waiting to get them to say okay to helping her find and rescue Matthew, she spellbound Satu. That's how long. It was just unnecessarily long. Oh my goodness. So much. Oh, I am not going by my notes. Let me so I am all over the place. Uh okay. Okay. Sorry, people talking about what they're gonna do for Thanksgiving. Do. Okay, I said that. Shoot. Okay. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Also, when she goes to the congregation, she meets a witch who is the great granddaughter of the witch that was impregnated by Benjamin. So basically, she I can't remember how old she was, but she was definitely over 100 years old. Her mother and grandmother lived to be well into their 200s. I don't know how old her great grandmother, because her great grandmother gave birth to her grandmother, who was the vampire witch. So this was almost like, because I think at this point, did Diana have the babies? Diana must have had the. I am everything is swirling in my head because I finished reading the book and then I went and rewatched season 3 right after it. So everything is swirling in my head. But either way, whether she had the babies or not. This was like her getting to see, what's gonna happen to her babies. Like her babies, whether even if they're a witch, they're gonna have long life. So, and they may not be immortal, but they're gonna live very long. And the woman had to put on like, here's where I'm unclear. Because when she looked at the woman looked like she was in her 30s. And then she did something, did a spell, and then all of a sudden she looked her age. So I was like, was the fact that she was in her 30s a disguising spell? What was up? Okay. Do-do-do-do. Okay, so, but yeah, so basically, because she was Benjamin's great granddaughter, she was a part of Matthew's family, because of the whole sire and da 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 da. But she was proof that vampire and witch had a baby, and that baby lived, and that baby went on to have children. They had children. So it's like I said, this was 1,000 years ago. So they had to have lived longer than 200 years, because it was 1,000 years ago when the covenant was made. But we'll figure it out. I don't know. Something is not adding up. I may be misremembering. Remember, I am on sinus allergy medication. Okay. Yeah, so I talked about that. They were afraid of intermixing the species, and what would that do to the vampires' balance of power? So the covenant was not put in place to protect them, it was put in place to protect the vampire dominance over the other creatures. Excuse me. Another difference in the book and the show is, in the book they really didn't show Diana bringing her motion to break the covenant. Like, you see it in the show, but in the book they basically cut to, they're like, okay, it happened. Like, because like I said, in the book she goes to the covenant twice. I mean, she goes to the congregation twice. So the second time she goes to the congregation, this is months after Matthew has been rescued, because since it took them days to agree to help rescue Matthew, the man was, every bone in his body was broken. Benjamin had fed him glass, so like he had internal bleeding and injuries and stuff going on. It took literal months for him to be able to walk and use his hands again. He was messed up. Matthew was messed up. So it took a while. So finally, she met. So they were emailing her, and Baldwin was like, you need to meet with the congregation again. So finally everybody was like, yeah, you really need to go to the congregation again, because you need to break the covenant. Like, what the hell are you doing? So she goes to the congregation. She sits down and be like, I wanna break the covenant. And then it cuts to after it was over. It's like, yeah, it passed. And they didn't, like in the show, Gerbert was like, he fought it tooth and nail, but in the book he didn't. In the book, he very reluctantly went along, because they had blackmail material on him. So at the beginning of the book and beginning of the show, like when Baldwin comes in, like the little bastard he is, it tells everybody, y'all gotta leave. The congregation is going to be sending Gerbert and Satu to come check out the house to see if Diana and Matthew's here. So everybody got to leave. So they went back to Madison. I think Marcus and Phoebe stayed in Septor. Maybe, I can't remember. Whatever, they stayed in Europe, and Isabeau had to be taken as a hostage by Gerbert. So she went to go stay in his house as a hostage, like not like a hostage tied up and can't go anywhere, but kind of like the Game of Thrones hostage. Like Theon Greyjoy was a hostage to the Starks, so his daddy wouldn't act up. That type of hostage. So while she was there, she had, I can't remember if this was a demon or a vampire, whatever. She had somebody, because Gerbert wasn't good with electronics and whatnot. So she had somebody come and set up his computer and stuff for him. So they was monitoring everything he did on that computer, every uh, transaction he made. They discovered he made a demon a vampire back in the 1700s, and he put her up in an apartment in Paris, and of course, paying for her, taking care of her. But like everybody knew Gerbert was doing this mess. They knew about he had this witch enthralled. And then, he's talking about we can't get rid of the covenant, and he made a demon a witch. I mean, he made a demon a vampire, and that was definitely against the rules. That's definitely against vampire rules. Vampire rules, you can't make a demon or a witch a vampire. You just can't do it. Like Marcus can make Phoebe a vampire because Phoebe's human, and that's how vampires procreate. Whatever it's you have to make a human a vampire, and that's another thing. In the show, they really don't bring it up, but in the book, like at the very beginning of the book, Marcus and Phoebe are engaged. And Marcus and Phoebe have plans for Phoebe to become a vampire. Like, this is my mate. We gonna make her a vampire. They still never told us in the book who did they plan to make, to be her sire. Because like everybody they know is a part of the family. So they would have to find somebody, because otherwise it would feel very incestuous to me. If someone within the family made her a vampire, I feel like it would have to be like a Miriam or something. Maybe they could get away with Gallo Glass, because yes, because Gallo Glass was sired by Hugh, and Hugh was Philippe's blood son, and so he's not blood related to Marcus. So I think Phoebe, or not Phoebe, I think Miriam or Gallo Glass could do it. But they don't say. And poor Gallo Glass, he's off fixing his broken heart because he fell in love with Diana. But like when he met her, she was already Matthew's maid. So it's messy. It's so messy. Okay, I have skipped over a lot of stuff in the book. There's so much. There is so much. These books are long. These books are like 500 pages long. Yes, it's not as long as Game of Thrones, but it's still very long. There's probably half descriptions. Oh. Another change from the books to the show is that in the book, all of the old books in the Bodleian library have been moved to another library. So they were like, oh, so she couldn't go to the Bodleian and just call the book up, because they're like, oh, those books have been moved. But they were like, we know this book, has been spelled, like bewitched by her father to be at the Bodleian. So they know the book is still at the Bodleian, but they can't keep asking for it there because everybody gonna look at them like they crazy. We told you these books are moved. Get out of my face. So they have to come come in at night, and they end up using one of Father Hubbard's people. I think he has some vampires, like they were doing construction, and they were doing construction 24 hours. So a couple of Father Hubbard's vampires got them in the work site, and then they spent hours, literal hours trying to get this book before finally she let Cora go, her fire drake. And then she has this long conversation with Cora, and then because Cora wants to be free. Cora wants to be set free. And so she, like Aladdin, she agrees to, like, hey, find a book for me, and then you're free to go. I set you free. So then they find a book, and the book is just on a shelf. It's just on the shelf in a box. They didn't have to do all that, but whatever. I liked how it happened in the show. I feel like a lot of things, a lot of the changes that happened from the book to the show, in the show, they created conflict where it didn't exist in the book. Like that. Like them just being able to stay all night for hours upon hours looking for this book. Whereas in the show, they had to come to the Bodleian because the book is in the Bodleian. So it didn't make sense for them to go through the back and forth. Because I feel like there's a lot of unnecessary moves in the book too. So like the back and forth didn't need to even be mentioned. So they go to the Bodleian during the day, library full of witches, demons, and vampires, who knows. Library full of patrons. And they call the book. And then they have to disguise themselves while they do that. I feel like that had a lot more conflict to it because it was some stakes. I feel like there was no stakes. Like when she goes to her friend Chris, like they go, like they don't find Chris in London. He is, of course, he's her friend, and so they both work at Yale. So he has his science laboratory in Yale. So she goes to Yale. She goes to well, Chris actually comes to her because he's pissed off because they're best friends, but we ain't heard of this Negro in the last two books. This is the first time I remember hearing about him. And he her best friend in the whole wide world. So he pissed that she ain't said nothing to him in a whole year. And so then finally she's like, "Oh, I'm a witch. My husband's a vampire." Da 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 da. And unlike the show, Chris, who's like has some, who's like, "Oh, uh, he don't believe him at first. They have to like prove it." The book, Chris was like, "Okay." Didn't blink twice. Didn't He immediately accepted what she told him? Cause like I'm a scientist. I have to suspend my disbelief until it's proven wrong. I'm like, that's not science, but he believed him. So like things like that. I feel like the show put in conflict where it didn't exist. Like having Knox follow, like going Knox going to Father Hubbard to get the page, or going to the demon after she went there to get the page, and going to the coven after she left the coven to find the page. That's not in the book. uh when Father Hubbard brings Chris to her, he brings the page to her immediately. So at the beginning of the book, she has two pages immediately, and they have to figure out how to find that third page. But she immediately, like, he just hands it over to her. So, okay. But he immediately hands the page over to her. But like, so, and then she's able to go get the page once the London Coven helps her find out where TJ Weston is in the book. Like, they have this revelation, because like when she first, in the very first book, there was a lot of witches, demons, and vampires watching her to try to get her to see if she's gonna call that book again so they can get the book from her. And TJ Weston was one of those demons. He was one that she was like, "Oh, you always have headphones in your ear that wasn't connected to anything." So he was just strange. So there was no conflict with getting that page from TJ Weston. But on the show, they had conflict. On the show, he was like, "No, the demons are done wrong." Da, 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 da. So she goes and she gets Agatha, and Agatha goes to him, and like, yeah, and they're like, "Hey, we brought you a friend. We brought you someone like you. His little friend." And then he hands over the page. But yeah, none of that is in the book. There's no conflict. The major conflict is like finding, once they found the page, that's it. It's done. It's over. And then they had the page for months, like literal months, before they finally went to the Bodleian and got it out. But yeah. Okay, so side note, back to Cora wanting to be free. The only weavers had familiars, and in 1590, so Goody Alsop had a familiar, and her father Stephen Proctor had a familiar, but Goody Alsop was like on the verge of death. So this whole the familiar has to leave once you know, find the true meaning. I don't know of life. I guess that didn't exist back then because Goody Alsop had her familiar until death, and her father had his familiar until he died. So I'm like trying to figure out, is this is this something new? Is this because Diana is supposed to be bringing about a new age? So with the new age, familiars are only going to be with you until you are off the training wheels, and then boom, they got to leave and go be free. Cause like, unlike the show, the fire drake is definitely this ethereal thing, but in the book, the fire drake is like an actual dragon. She she's a solid dragon that lives within Diana. So Diana had to live with being pregnant with twins and a fire drake inside of her for months on end. I couldn't do it. So the fire drake, when they first went back to Septor, it was, it would leave and it would fly out all around, and he'll hang in the rafters. He was she was breaking stuff. She was a menace. She was a menace. So she gets to go off and be a fire drake off by herself and welcome all the new familiars, because I guess now that they have a new age, they're going to get some more weavers. Maybe one of Diana's children is a weaver, because as we know, one is a witch, one is a vampire. But I'm not even gonna talk about what she called them in the books. That was just silly, and it was during a serious moment too. Uh, yeah. So back to the Book of Life. I like the shows way better. There was way more conflict, and I liked how I feel like I liked how they introduced conflict. They introduced stakes that just wasn't there in the book. Uh, I feel like the writer did everything but move the plot along. Uh, okay, so yeah, so basically there was a whole lot of going place to place, where as in the show they pretty much went from Septor to London, and that was it. But in the book they went from Septor to Madison, then to Yale, and then from there Matthew and I'm about to call it Sarah. Matthew and Diana split up. She goes to London. He goes to New Orleans. Now again, in the book, there is no conflict when it comes to making these people a part of his scion. They immediately agree because they tell him, "Oh, you got the gene for blood rage, and the congregation will want to kill you. They want to kill you." So they were like, "Oh, the only way for us to be protected is to be a part of the scion." So the only person who was the holdout was Ransom, and then he had to go to Ransom and take accountability for all the people he killed and blah 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 blah. But it was very quickly and flippantly done, you know. But in the show, I feel like that scene in the show was my favorite scene in all of season 3, when Matthew goes to Ransom and takes accountability for killing all of those vampires, including his maid. Because also in the book, it's not Matthew, it's Matthew and Juliet has killed most of those people, and Matthew has killed some. But in the show, they leave Juliet out of it, and they just have it be Matthew killed all those people, and Matthew stayed there for hours, accounting for every single person he murdered. And I liked how when Matthew first walked in and they were being, they were having conflict. And Matthew was like, "I'm sorry for what happened." And Ransom was like, "Uh-uh. It ain't something that just happened. It was something you did." And I was like, oh, that was a powerful moment. That was a powerful moment, especially because, I mean, let's be real. This is New Orleans. You have this white vampire killing. I mean, they weren't all black, but a lot of black vampires, some white vampires. And so it's this white vampire, this black vampire, and then this white man gives him a real apology. Like, I am sorry for the things I did to you. That, like, apology is an apology if you don't take accountability. Sorry for what happened is not taking accountability. Sorry, again, that's not a real apology. But I'm sorry for the things I did to you. That's a real apology. That's taking accountability. That I loved. So that's the reason why that's one of my favorite moments in season 3. Oh, and so in the book, after he does this, after he has no conflict getting them to join his scion, does he go home? No. He sits around for who knows how long. He gets home, and Fernando and Chris are there to tell him about, Diana possibly being in danger. But he's like, oh, my blood rage is so close to the surface. I can't take any bad news right now. So he goes off with Jack, and they build the baby cradles for like a week. And then finally, once he calmed down, he is like, okay, now you can tell me what's wrong. So then they tell her, oh, she's having complications in the pregnancy. She's on bed rest, but she should be all right. And he was pissed. He's like, why did you tell me? I was like, you told them not to tell you. You knew something was wrong, and you spent the whole week building a cradle. Like, your whole going around, running around like a chicken with his head cut off once you found out that she could have been dead. And you waited a whole week to find out what was going on. And then want to blame. I was just like, oh, just Matthew. Ugh. Book Matthew. Book Matthew kind of got on my nerves. He was a tad bit annoying. He was a tad bit annoying. Ooh, I like that the show didn't make the book of life a permanent part of her appearance. It comes and it goes. Like, you can see the words coming, you can see it across her eyes, but it goes away. In the show, it's permanent. You could always see words scrolling around her hand, around her. Like, she becomes the palimpsest. Or palimpsest. I don't know how to say that word. But she becomes that. And then she's always got words coming across her eyes to the point where, and then she had the tree of life was like tattooed around her skull. Like branches coming out of her hairline, and the base and the roots are coming down her neck to her shoulders. And she kind of scared her babies when she came home looking like that. The baby was like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, I was like, why? Why would you do that? Why would you make it permanent like that? Scaring them babies like that. Basically, she could have, if TikTok existed back when this book was written, she could have had one of them TikTok like, oh, parents change their appearances, babies lose their mind, because what the hell? Why are you all of a sudden looking different? Why are there words moving across your eyes, Mom? I also, throughout these books, Diana received permanent scars and markings on her body. And I feel like something different happened to her every single book. Every single book, something happened to her, and it was like a permanent mark, permanent scar. Like her back is full of scars and markings. And, from what Satu did to her. From what, and then I think she got a fire drink on her because she got core. I feel like somebody else did something to her, and she has permanent markings. And then the Book of Life gave her permanent markings. And I don't like that. Like, it's one thing if she chose to get these things on her body, to accept these things onto her body. That's one thing. But for her to have physical evidence of her trauma on her body throughout the rest of her life, I didn't like that. I didn't like that. Isabeau was a lot livelier in the book. And she also was in London when Diana left Yale to go to London. She and Marta Like she just decided, she just told Gerbert, yeah, it's time for me to go. And then she and Martha walked out of his house. And like he's like, you gonna walk back to Septura? Because I think they were in France. But Septura was like, I don't know, 80 miles away. And she was like, yeah, I'm gonna walk back. But she told Martha, yes, somebody gonna meet us in a car and they gonna pick us up and take us to the airport. We going to London. Uh, Diana's going to London. I don't want her to come back to a cold house. So they went back to the house, opened up, get it all warm and toasty, buy food, supplies and stuff like that, so she wouldn't come to a cold, empty house. Isabeau was just a lot. Like, I feel like this Isabeau, the Isabeau in the show, like although she warmed up to Diana and she did accept Diana into her family, I feel like she remained subdued throughout. Whereas Isabeau in the book was this lively, making jokes, uh, doing things. I feel like in the first book she was subdued because she had to accept this witch into her family. But after that, like we really hardly saw her in book 2. But book 3, she had a completely different personality. And I liked her. I liked the lively Isabel, and I wish we could have seen that, especially since they had a chance to actually show her transition out of her, sort of subduedness into this lively Isabel. I wish we could have seen that on the show. Where am I? Oh. Okay, another change from the book to the show is Baldwin gives up his seat on the congregation to Diana. Like he's like, I'm not going back. That's yours. And in the book, she's now in charge of the congregation. She's now the person who has to call the meetings and do all this stuff and take care of all this stuff, as well as being a tenured professor at Yale, a mother of twins, the matriarch of a vampire clan, and now she's in charge of the congregation. I was like, that's too much. She doing too much. She needs to get rid of that. So that's why I liked the show version better, where she gave it up to Agatha, and Agatha's in charge and giving the demons much needed dominance, because they were at the bottom. They were always at the bottom. It's like vampires, witches, and demons. And demon was way at the bottom. So I like that. But something else that happens in the book that they don't show in the show at all is that by the end of the book, uh, Sarah and Agatha all of a sudden become best friends. Like they were gossiping about something that happened, and then by the end of the book, where she was saying, "Oh, they did this, they did that," Sarah and Agatha traveling around the world together, and then they make a special mention of the fact that Emily has been dead for a whole year now. So are they saying Sarah's moving on with Agatha? Is Agatha Sarah's new boo? I wish you would have been explicit. Explicitly tell me that Agatha is Sarah's new boo. Don't just leave hints. Are they friends or are they boos? I need to know. But whatever. Okay. Uh, but yeah, that's it. Uh, I'm definitely forgetting a lot. Blame the medication. I'm about to go and lie down. I'm about to go lie down for 24 hours. So you can check the description for links to my book. Let me pull out the book. The Fairy Princess. First in a series of 5 books. The second is going to be coming out sometime this year. I'm hoping before the end of the year. I'm planning before the end of the year. It's all, the editing is done. We're working on the images, trying to get it together. I am formatting the book myself, so trying to get everything together. So once I get the final images, they'll be ready to go, to upload and be on sale digitally and physically. But yeah, so okay, so the book, merch that goes along with the book. There's links to that. And a Facebook group called Fairy Princess where you can come and join the conversation and we can talk about a discovery of witches. We can talk about the Fairy Princess books. Um, we can talk about anything you like, whatever you like. You can support my channel by donating through Ko-fi, Cashapp, or Super Thanks. You can also join my membership and or get some fantasy nerd merch because there's like I have to get it myself. It's a cute little unicorn with pink glasses, and there's this pink pullover that I want so bad. My sister has it, and it's so cute. Um, Links are below the video. You can check the description for my affiliate link to bookshop.org. So if you wanted to buy the All Souls trilogy so you can read it for yourself, buy it through my affiliate link so I can get a kickback from that. Thank you in advance. But yeah, that's all. Thank you guys for sitting with me as I ramble about books and TV shows. Because that's all I do is read and watch TV. I also do a lot of writing. I've been writing a lot. And that's part of what went into my opinion of this book. But yeah, I'll see you guys. Oh, because I don't feel too good. And I pushed myself to do this. There will be no membership, no members only live tomorrow. Sorry, I gotta get rested because, you know, it's Wicked for Good weekend. And I gotta go see that at some point this weekend. So I'm gonna stay in bed for as long as I possibly can so I can be fresh and rested and ready to see Wicked for Good. So you'll probably see me again Wednesday. I'll be going live as I cook Thanksgiving dinner. So there's that. And I don't know what I'm going to do for Friday yet, but we'll figure it out. All right. All right. Thanks and goodbye.